So this community basically is a is all about, as it says, a cloud platform, but it's primarily about the cloud computing platform, infrastructure, security, and AI. Well, the objective is to bring the members of the global tech community together, whether the experts in the IT industry, or the mere someone who is just starting off in their career, to come together and learn from each other, particularly from the experts, learn from their understanding of and the insights they have on whatever different industries they have worked in or come from. So um, as I said, the focus is on presenting the latest innovations on the areas of cloud security and AI. However, uh, I mean it's a kind of a journey to be there basically. But at the very beginning, we want to get up with what's currently in the market, what are the major talked about topics in the industry in regards to cloud security and AI, of course. The objective is to plan hybrid kind of meetups down the line. However, this is a digital only meetup for the time being. Um, the as a standard process, the mode of delivery of these presentations are the PPT based. However, depending on what the topic is, where we are doing, how we are doing, we could have demonstration sessions as well. We could have group discussions, intense group discussions as well, and so on. So that's pretty much about the community. We are always thankful to Microsoft for having us in the meetup group. We're also thankful to Microsoft MVP program for guiding us through engaging in these vibrant technical communities, engaging with people who love all of these cloud Microsoft technologies, Azure platform, and so on and so forth. With this, I want to jump into my presentation about optimizing your cloud transition, key assessments for Azure. Um, this is definitely not a new topic in general, um, because as per what I understand from the recent, updates in the industry, many organizations have already made their move to the cloud, right? So it's not something that's something happening in the future, but it's already has already happened. But it's just that not I mean, even this wave of cloud movement, cloud transition has occurred from the past decade. Yet there are still many companies who needs to make these transitions to the cloud, right, sooner or later. And we can still see that some customers are still using on-prem versions of Windows servers, for instance, and they're still running, I mean, very old versions, like 15 years old versions of servers on their production environments, basically. So it's definitely high time. It's not just about the servers, but could be any, that there are many triggers, the migration triggers. I mean, and could be a right time for them to move transition to the cloud, right? So how do users really, optimize their journey to the cloud is really a concern for a lot of people today. So um, obviously, if I'm sure some of you have already come across this thing called CAF, Cloud Adoption Framework. If not, this is basically a, a set of methodologies, a set of best practices, a set of documentations, templates that Microsoft has brought together to fundamentally align business, people, and technology strategy, so that um, so that the customer who wants to pave their way to the cloud or want to optimize their cloud environment gets the best guidance, basically, not just from Microsoft, but could be from Microsoft partners or the entire ecosystem that that's basically that's basically have moved to the cloud already or are doing really well with the cloud infrastructure and so on. So um, and as I said, it's not just about one thing, but it's a set of different methodologies, different steps within that. For instance, there are stages such as strategy and plan. For instance, um, so that's where you know. Basically, the stakeholders are aligned to understand, to set the business strategy, to really identify and uh, you know uh, document why we really want to move, and what are the triggers for the move to the cloud, and so on, and what are the financial implications, what are the technical considerations that needs to be made. And then slowly, once you align these business strategy, then is to plan to come up with a standard cloud adoption plan documentation, so that the next steps for the migrations can be curved. And then on the next stage, definitely, for instance, on the ready stage, you could really set up your first Azure landing zone, and then further expand your landing zone with optimize your landing zone with um, governance controls, for instance, uh, uh, and and there are many other uh, controls that you can apply to your landing zone in Azure environment, your subscriptions, for instance. And then obviously, then you keep maintaining your Azure environment through the governance and manage methodologies. And in each of these stages, there are different sets of standard guidance shared by Microsoft. And not just that, um, but there's something called Azure Well Architected Framework, which considers 5 important pillars to optimize cloud environment in terms of cost, operational excellence, for instance, of performance efficiency, reliability, and security. So that's definitely there. So as I was speaking of this, how this cloud adoption framework is set up, basically these are those standard methodologies, which all starts from strategy, as I said, then plan, then to ready, adopt, and then which goes on and on is the govern and the manage stages. So as you can see, in each of these stages, there are a couple of links that I have added, which I really want to share this PPT later, so that I mean, I took some effort to really put this together into PPT, so that it's easier for us to um, track, understand, use the right assessments. So basically, as I'm saying, all of these templates are basically the sort of assessments to support us in each of the stages, basically. So for instance, when it comes to the strategy, when in the initial strategy stage, there's something called cloud adoption strategy evaluator, right? So yeah, so basically, so it what it really does for you is it as I said, it really identifies your cloud adoption needs, and finds the recommendations. So for your journey, basically, right? Uh, but that's, I mean, we could go into each of these, but definitely there's a lot of this. For instance, if I click on one of these, let me just, I have also added the links in here. So when I click on Cloud Adoption Strategy Evaluator, it basically takes me to this Cloud Adoption Strategy Evaluator sort of Microsoft assessments, right? And if I click on Start Assessment, so it basically comes up with this template with a set of questionnaires, right? And it all starts with identifying your motivations for moving to the cloud, for instance, right? And you could name it, and so these are the questions that you will expect in the assessment, and then once you fill this out, it will come up with some sort of um, indicators which will help you to move how you can pave your way to the cloud. So if we go into the cloud on the plan methodology, similarly there are these several assessments that's available. Obviously, as you can see, some of these assessments are like overlapping to each other because they really support in both of those stages of the cloud journey. So for instance, cloud journey tracker you can still use when you are on the planning stage, but most importantly, I've highlighted this strategic migration assessment and readiness tool to really so this assessment tool really helps you to understand your, I mean, as it says, your readiness to make a move, right? Then once you come up with your cloud adoption plan by using a template that it brings the stakeholders on the common page, you can also leverage on the Azure DevOps demo generator or Azure DevOps plan generator, so that you can create a plan for the cloud adoption. So into the Azure DevOps itself directly. So this is just a screenshot of how it looks with the assessments with the Smart Strategic Migration Assessment Readiness tool. So at the end of the assessment, it will give you a sort of score telling you like what is your current state, what is your current readiness stage, and you could really do this over and over again depending on how you. I mean, as you can see your score, as you can see what areas you are good into at this moment and where you could really uh, prepare better. So depending on that, you can work on those areas and then come back to this assessment and redo the assessment and to understand how you have improved over the time. So it's not just one-off assessment, but you can really play around with it and do this again and again as you would need to. So that's where once you start, um, once you are ready with your landing zone, you start your deploying your first initial workloads to the Azure platform, and then that's when you start to furnace add in, for instance, simple things such as the naming, making sure that you're following a standard naming conventions. I mean, even in terms of or tagging the resources so that those resources are not lost or orphaned. You can leverage on different tools to use, for instance, Azure naming tool, so that you could use standard naming procedure for this purpose, and so on and so forth. There are several other tools, resources, assessments to support in these in this particular stage, and you can continue to um, work, use the guides, assessments, as it says, um, and basically adopt the platform. And in the meantime, I mean, it's worth mentioning also is that you could leverage on a tool called Azure Migrate, the tool which you can use it from Azure, of course. And you can not only use this tool on the pre-migration stage for assessments, but for actual migration of some of the workloads, such as the app services. I mean, migrating your applications to app services, or for database migrations, and so on. Um, there's a program for this. I think there's a new name for this program, but initially it used to be called as AMMP. You could most possibly leverage on this program if you qualify for, depending on who you are, what size of the data center you want to migrate to the cloud. Could really leverage on uh, this program. Or if there's any questions about how to make a move or how to get started, you can always reach me, and we can just further discuss, and we can go from there. Um, Obviously, govern and manage are the two additional areas of the. I mean, not additional, but the last two important areas of this cloud adoption framework that provides you with the standard assessments to optimize your cloud environment. Um, I mean, these are some of the assessments which you can use. Uh, Please, I mean, do use them. Try using them and see how it helps, and would appreciate your feedback, and possibly if there are any questions, we can just discuss them as well. Um, Looks like this is an additional thing. I will just skip them. Yeah. So call to action on this would be to, if this is very new thing for you, then just explore Cloud Adoption Framework. And obviously, there are so many assessment resources that I put on the PPT, which you could explore them, write I mean, fill out those assessment forms and see how it aligns to your cloud digital state. Um, if you are already in Azure platform, if you if you are not leveraging on Azure well-architected framework, please do so. Definitely, the guidance is really helpful. Migrate, if you have not used Azure Migrate, please do use that as well for assessment and migration. Uh, any questions? If there's any questions, I would definitely like to take up. Else, I would also have a feedback form at the end, which I will send across later, before the end of all of our sessions. Right. Any questions? All right. Looks like there's no questions. In that case, I think we can. Aman Patel. Thank you. Susie has a response there on the chat. Thank you for the informative presentations. You're welcome, Susie. And yes, please, Aman, do you have questions or? All right. In that case, thank you once again, everyone, for listening to me. Obviously, I mean, this is this topic is definitely something that needs to be explored more and more, depending on which phase of the cloud journey you are in. So not every assessment is important, to be honest. It really depends on which like I said, which stays of the cloud journey, cloud adoption journey you are in, and depending on that, you could really explore those specific assessments. Uh, so yeah, good luck with all of this, and would love to explore this together with you guys. On I mean, it will definitely be interesting having this conversation around later. Thank you again. So with this, I would like to pass over this session to our next speaker, Arjun Gautam. So Arjun, are you on the call?
Hi, Pradeep. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm on the call. Thank you for
Great.
having me.
You're most welcome.
Okay. Yeah, let me start by sharing my screen and we can start. Okay. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me for this session to speak today about Azure Monitor for Operational Excellence. And thank you, Pradeep, for organizing this and taking time for this one. A little bit about me. So my name is Arjun Gautam, and sorry, let me bring it back. Um, I'm working as a support escalation engineer at Microsoft Reading. I've been in Microsoft for last 3.5 years, and I'm also the certified cloud solution architect. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can connect me on LinkedIn with the link provided there. Prior to working at Microsoft, I also used to work as a data center operation technician at one of the data center provider in London. So let's move on to today's session as we are talking about operational excellence for with Azure Monitor. Uh, let's take a moment to uh, understand what operational excellence means, right? As Pradeep already mentioned on the previous presentation regarding well-architected framework and its involvement in your journey to adopt the cloud. Um, so operational excellence is one of the pillar of well-architected framework as described in Azure. This deal is the way that you can optimize your systems and processes and infrastructure so that it runs reliably, it runs efficiently with continuous improvement, right? And so the on the core of operational excellence, it explains the use of DevOps culture and the observability. So when a workload or infrastructure is running, we need to understand and anticipate any issues before they become a big incident, and need to make a data-driven decision by monitoring the workload, learn from them, and drive improvement. So all these decisions that we make are done with the understanding and visibility of what the workload is already running, right? So we need to understand are the workload running with the probability, predictability? Can we predict them in time that if anything goes wrong and if we can drive the improvement, right? So with that, when it comes to monitoring and observability, uh, so let's talk about a little bit difference. What could be the difference with monitoring and observability? The monitoring deals with the collecting and analyzing and acting on the telemetry data that are generated by the platform resources and applications so that we can get the insight on them. So With observability, it takes a step further by looking at the component of those different distributed systems that we use and how they interact together with the data that we receive from monitoring them, and that helps in identifying the cause of the issue so that we can act upon the cause of the issue by observing the system and its overall health. Um, on observability, it builds on three main pillars, which are logs, metrics, and traces. So I'm going to talk about what those are. So metrics are the numerical values generated by any workload or system. It can be, for example, a CPU usage of a virtual machine at a given point in time, or memory usage of a virtual machine, or the application that uses in a time, right? The logs, these are the events that occur within the system and can be free from text in either structure or unstructured, and contains a timestamp of the event that occurred. And traces are the correlation of those logs and metrics through which we can identify how a request or the how a transaction went through from its start to the end, and if there is any issues during the execution of that transaction. If there is an issue with the traces, we will understand how the system worked. And sometimes it is also known as distributed traces, right? However, now we do have some challenges on the modern workload, modern system, uh, because they are really diverse, right? And there could be multiple services running on premises, multiple services running on cloud, and that increase the complexity, because with the number of increased workload, with different component that need to be monitored or that we need to have an insight on, from platform or infrastructure, there is an increased complexity. And with this increased number of workload and diverse environment, they generate a lot of data, monitoring data like metrics and logs that is generated in large numbers. So need storage for monitoring and analyzing those. So again, we need tool to analyze the derived data and then get insight and act upon them to do a response so we can mitigate any issues if that happens. Then there is another challenge as well with the security and compliance. How do we keep the monitoring solution secure itself? How the data that are at rest can be secured, and when it is in transit, that can be secured. Again, another challenge is the integration of those data. If we can make another solution that acts upon the data so that we can improve the working of the system and get great outcome without wasting any resources, right? So this is where the Azure Monitor helps, and Azure Monitor will help in overcoming those challenges by providing a source to collect the data. It's providing a solution to collection of those metrics, logs, and traces, storing them in a secure environment, providing tools to analyze those data that are received, and tools to respond on them, act on them, and integrate them with other component of the system that you are running, right? So this, so to define the Azure Monitor, it is a comprehensive monitoring solution that can help in collection, storage, analysis, and response, and integration of monitoring data that are coming from the workload that are running on premises or cloud environment. It can be Azure environment, or it can be other cloud environments such as AWS or GCP as well. Okay, so let's see the high level architecture of Azure Monitor. At high level, there are the data sources. These are the sources where you capture your data to monitor the environment, right? And there is the platform or the solution, which is Azure Monitor, that provides the methods of collection, how you can collect the data, how you can transfer them, how you can route them and transform them into the data platform where it stores the data. Now, data platform consists of mainly two type of data, which are metrics and logs. And Azure Monitor also provides additional platforms such as traces and changes. These are changes which are automatically captured in Azure platform where when a change in resource happens. Okay. Um, Now, after collecting and storing the data to gain the insight to act upon them, to make a decision on them, we need some tools to consume those data, right? So to do that, we have additional tools available on Azure Monitor, which can help on deriving the insight, visualizing them, analyzing them, responding them, and integrating them. Okay, so on next we will take a little bit deep dive on uh, all these components of Azure Monitor. So starting with data sources. Um, Data sources in Azure Monitor can be apps or workload which are running on Azure, other clouds, or on-premises. And these can be a custom application that a customer is running, or IaaS workload, which can be Azure virtual machines or SQL Server running on virtual machine. Then we have monitoring of infrastructure, which contains the operating system and container, while Azure Monitor by itself contains collects the logs metrics from the infrastructure. Logs are still needed to be collected, and these are the data sources that Azure Monitor can collect data from. Another source of data in Azure Monitor are from Azure platform itself, which can contain Azure tenant, which is it can collect the data from Azure Intra ID, where the activity logs, the sign-in logs, and audit logs can be collected from the Azure subscription, any ARM operation, any Azure resource management operation that you do that are collected as a log, as activity log, and Azure resources, again, any resources that are running on Azure, that those are collected. And these are the source from Azure platform itself. And additional to that, you can have the custom sources, which can be any application, or you can use any APIs to send data to the Azure Monitor from custom sources. It can be again running on Azure platform, other cloud, or on premises. Okay, so next is the data collection. Azure Monitor provides tools to collect the data from those sources identified, which is the workload or applications. If you As you want to provide tools like SDK, software development kits, which can be included within the application and coded and send data to the Azure Monitor. Then there are agents which collects data from the virtual machines, When you use the Azure Arc, then other platform or on premises as well, you can collect the data. So to provide assistance in collecting the data, there are data collection rule where you can configure what are the type of data that you want to collect from the sources. And diagnostic setting is also available on Azure platform for Azure resources, where um, metrics are collected by automatically, but to capture the actual logs that are generated when your platform is running, you need to use the diagnostic setting to send data to the Azure Monitor. So there is diagnostic setting. Zero config, again, as I mentioned earlier, automatically collected, which doesn't need any configuration on customer side. These are automatically collected. Most example are platform metrics. These are collected without any configuration. And again, there is API that you can use to send data to the Azure Monitor, okay, from the custom sources. Uh, Now, data platform, how or where it stores the data on Azure Monitor. As I mentioned, mostly metrics and logs are the main type of data that are collected in um, high level. Then we can even differentiate them in different types of logs and metrics. So uh, types of log that can be collected are activity logs. Again, these are the logs generated when you perform any operations on Azure resources. Platform logs generated by the platforms when it runs, for example, um, Azure Web App. When it's running, it generates the logs, and it is not collected by default automatically. You need to use diagnostic setting and specify what are the type of logs that you want to collect and send it to the Azure Monitor. Then those type of logs are the type of logs that can be collected. Application log, these are the logs generated by the application that is running on a workload. It can be application running on virtual machine. It can be application running on other cloud platforms or on premises or within Azure. And these are collected using the SDK or other instrumentation method, which does not require code changes. Then on metric side, we have platform metrics collected automatically. uh, Application metrics, these will require SDK or instrumentation as same as the application log. And Prometheus metrics, these are collected from the Azure Kubernetes services and can be stored in Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor provides a managed Prometheus, so this can be collected in Azure Monitor. And there are other custom logs and custom metrics that can be collected, and this will need some API to send data to the Azure data, and these are collected in Azure Monitor. Now, the consumption of the uh, data. Uh, Basically, there are a few ways that you can consume the data that you have collected from the data sources, right? The main usually used platform is the Azure portal, which is where you can go to the monitor blade and see the insight generated by different features of Azure Monitor, like application insight, container insight, virtual machine insight, network insight. There are other additional insights and data that are generated. And you can use the Azure Monitor Blade to see activity logs, alerts, metrics, and do check the logs, right? So on Insight side, we have application insight, container insight, virtual machine VM insight, and network insight, and additional other insight. These are the curated visualization that are available by default. You don't need to make any changes and does not have further customization that you can do as from the user level. So these are already provided insight that you can see. For application insight, this provides the overview and the insight that you can see from data collected from your applications. And similarly, container insight for the AKS resources, for the VM, virtual machine VM insights. So these insights are available for the resources that are running in Azure, right? Now, if we need some customization, want to do more than what is available by default, then there are workbook and dashboard that you can use. The Azure want to provide these tools to do the visualization, so you can analyze them. And addition to that, you can send them to Power BI or Grafana. Power BI and Grafana are not the part of Azure Monitor, but they have a very good integration. So again, you can use that to visualize your data that are collected, right? Next is analyzing those data using the metric explorer, those numerical data that are generated by the platform or application or system. You can use the metric explorer to check and do have a visualized chart of those metrics. And there is another tool for analyzing the logs and getting insight from the logs. That is log analytics. You can use a powerful query language called KQL, and with that you can uh, generate the analysis and provide the visualization. Again, change analysis is automatically captured when any change happens on your system. You can go to the change analysis and see when it happened, what was the previous status of the resource before the change, and what is the status of the resource after the change. So again, with that, you can have informed decision on what happened on the system before and after, right? Um, Next is responding on the received data. Um, Azure Monitor uses some of the options to use the machine learning to automatically provide alerts, such as there are smart detection alert, which uses machine learning to uh, provide you an alert regarding if there is any anomaly on the system, if it learns the behavior of the system for some time, and if there is an unusual pattern on the usage of your application, then it provides alerts stating that there is unusual rise in certain uh, uses of the application, and so that the user who is monitoring the application can act upon that. Then you can create your own alert, which is it provides a tool to generate the alert based on the signals that you receive from your monitored data sources. Okay, and get notified, and you can perform additional actions such as integrating that into other other tools, such as sending it to Event Hub, or creating, sending that to IT service management solution, external IT service management solution. So it automatically creates ticket or generates a work item for the developers to make some changes, those kind of thing. It can be done with alerts and action. Another very useful use of metrics generated by the platform is auto scaling. Auto scale. So if you have any workload that is running and if after configuring the auto scale with the metrics that is received from the sources, you can increase the number of instances that are running. For example, if a virtual machine is running an application and if the CPU usage goes more than 80%, then you can use the auto scale configuration rule to increase the number of so instances that are running that application. Okay. Next is integration of integration with the other type of services, like the data. After the data that is collected and analyzed, you can use that to integrate with Event Hub. You can store the raw data that are collected in Azure Monitor to Azure storage for long-term retention, or you can use that data stored in Azure storage to other data processing platform and then derive insights from there. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, you can send it to other managed partners such as IT service management. You can import or export data using APIs. You can use the collected data to generate a workflow on Logic app or trigger a function, or from the data generated, you can create a work item on Azure DevOps or GitHub. So these are the things that are available on Azure Monitor, which help in collecting the data from data source, storing them, um, and providing tools to analyze them so that you can have overall view of your system that is running in cloud environment. Either it can be Azure, any other cloud, or on premises, right? Um, so let's move on to some of the commonly used tools and feature in Azure Monitor. So first one is log analytics and log analytic workspace. Mostly these are used interchangeably when we say log analytics and log analytic workspace, but there's a subtle difference here. The log analytics is a tool in Azure portal that you can use to run query against the logs that you have already collected on Azure Monitor. And log analytics is the store where you collect the data. So either it is coming from your Azure virtual machine, or you are using diagnostic setting to send any platform logs, any application log that are collected. The log analytic workspace work as a data store, and you use the log analytics, which uses Kusto query language to analyze the data that you can run the Kusto query and then get insight from that collected data. Okay. So next feature and tool in Azure Monitor is Application Insight. It's a feature of Azure Monitor, commonly also known as Application Performance Monitoring Solution. This is used for the live web applications. Um, the it uses SDK or the codeless instrumentation to collect the data, and then you have other features that you can use in application insight, like live metrics, which collect data in every second, which is the live view of your application at the moment of time when the application is running, how it is performing. You can use that to check the application performance. You can use application map to see what are the dependencies of your application, how it interacts with other resources. For example, if an application is making calls to backend database service, or it is making calls to other external services to complete the transaction, how those transactions are following. Application map provides you a bird eye view of your application that is running. And you have another transaction view as well, where you see the step-by-step process of the request when it goes from beginning, how a request starts and how it ends, and if there is any issues with that transaction, if there is an exception occurred within the application, then that transaction view will help you to understand that, right? So application insight, with that, it uh, uses the observability pillars such as metrics, logs, and traces. So it helps in understanding the health of your overall application through observability. For application insight, you can collect data from Azure and non-Azure resources, like from the application that are running uh, in any platform. Uh, Storage of application insight data is done in log analytic workspace, and it also has a feature where you can monitor the availability of any endpoint uh, in internet. Okay, so next commonly used feature is Metric Explorer. This is the explorer that you can use to create a chart and visually correlate if there is any spike on the metric value, if there is any dip in metric value, or if you are running, let's take an example of virtual machine. If there is, you can use Metric Explorer to see how the CPU usage of the virtual machine goes within the configured period of time. And you can, with that, you can investigate the health and utilization of your resource, right? um, Moving to next one, alerts. This is also part of Azure Monitor, which helps in proactively identifying and addressing the issues, and it it helps in getting a notification, so that if there is any data that indicates there could be a problem with the monitor resource, then it will provide the notification, right? You can generate a lot on any monitored data that are on the data platform, like any metric or logs. It can be a metric alert based on metric that are received on as a monitor. Any log search alert based on the logs that are received. You use the Kusto query language to generate the log search alert. Activity logs alert, again, you can create alert on activity logs if there is any activities that are happening and you want to get alerted for those activities, like a shutdown of virtual machine, or a deletion of resource. If you want to get those type of notification, if it happens, then you can get notification on activity logs alert. The smart detection alert, as I mentioned earlier, with the AI ops, the machine learning algorithm that uses and analyzes the regular uses of the application and automatically generates um, based on the usage of the application. And Prometheus alert, again, collected from the AKS and the Prometheus metrics that are created, and based on those metrics, it can generate alert. Basically are generated, and you get a notification in Azure portal, and use if using mobile app can get notification there. Additionally, you can get notified with email using the action group. You can create an action group and then get notification on any generated alert. Okay. One Another useful and commonly used feature on Azure Monitor is Gusto query language. It's a powerful but simple language to query data from different data types. It This is the primary tool in Azure Portal that is used to edit log queries and interactively analyze the result of the monitored data. This is the main tool that is used in log analytics, is in the log search query when creating workbook, dashboard, and making queries for any application inside the data as well. Okay. So with this, I want to do a quick demo. Let me see what's the time. So here, how we go into the Azure Monitor, right? How do we check the Azure Monitor? There are different way that you can utilize the Azure Monitor in Azure Portal. We are not able to do it due to time constraint or for the data collection, how you can configure the data collection from different sources. But on this demo session, I will briefly show what are the things that you can do with already collected data. Okay. Uh, so after the data is collected and it is available on Azure Monitor, you can use the Monitor tab here uh, to check all the inside, the detections, and all other tools available on Azure Monitor. You can use the logs to generate the log queries and check the data. So um, let's say there are some of the data collected already on the Azure Monitor, and you can use this logs blade to uh, get run query there, right? And there is alert blade there where you can see already generated alert, or you can create a new alert from here as well. Okay. Um, there is metrics blade, as I mentioned earlier. There is this is you also called metrics explorer. Here you can select the scope, and from your resources that are running on your Azure subscription, you can see the metrics. This is one consolidated view for Azure Monitor, but there is another way as well that you can see the monitoring data and check them. That is after going into the resource itself. So let's take an example of this demo VM. Here, I want to check the metrics because this VM is Azure virtual machine. As I mentioned, the metrics are collected without any instrumentation, without any configuration required. So I want to check this virtual machine, and I want to check the um, CPU usage used by this one. So I can even type CPU, percentage CPU, and here I can see average of percentage CPU in last 24 hours, and is aggregated by every 5 minutes. This is I can check the aggregation, change the aggregation as well to 1 minute. So within each minute, how my VM is being used. What are the CPU percentage that are getting used. So I can use the max percentage, and I can see here at one point in time, I can see the maximum CPU usage was 95, almost 100%, and it went down. So with observability and with understanding and improving the system, so I can see here my VM usage went up to 96% at this time. So I can proceed to investigate why this happened, why the CPU percentage was increased, right? Is it because of my application getting a lot of requests where so these are the things that we can check with Metric Explorer. We can there are different available metrics that are automatically captured, right? Depending on what are the issues that we are investigating, then we can change this to visualize, right? Uh, Next, I want to show is the Azure Monitor logs or the log analytics. These are the logs that are stored in log analytic workspace, and I can use the query language, Kusto query language to get the mm, logs and search for those logs. So here I've used a simple query language, Azure Activity, where level is informational, and I can see the activity logs here. Okay. One additional thing I would like to mention here is activity log by default are not collected in log analytic workspace, but they are available here. Okay. They are available. Activity logs are collected without any configuration, but to query them and perform interactive analysis, you need to send them to the log analytic workspace. To do that, we need to use diagnostic setting, right? So here I've created a diagnostic setting where I created subscript. Let me quickly show you here. So I can create, let's say I want to get notified on administrative security and alert based logs, and I want to send that to log analytic workspace. Then I can select the log analytic workspace and send that to the log analytic workspace for um, performing the log analytics query. Okay, I've already created this, so I am gonna discard this one. Um, I already have this one subscription to LA, and I do have all this already created. So any activity logs that are generated on this, I can go to the logs and perform the log analytics query to get those data. Okay. Next one, I quickly wanted to demo is alert here. I've created the alert, and this is I can get a notification on the Azure portal and get the notification on the mobile as well. I think this is all in all that we have for now. I think I went a little bit more than the scheduled time. Sorry for that. and I will end my demo and presentation here. If you have any question, I'm available to take your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you for your lovely, insightful presentation. Um, it was nice. I mean, it was good and insightful. I mean, I just want to ask a quick question here too,
Yes.
before possibly others might also want to ask. Uh, Log analytics.
Yes.
Is there a way to analyze logs without enabling log analytics in Ozero Monitor?
Uh, so without enabling log analytics, there you will not be able to perform the log query. So so Azure Monitor Log Store is built on Azure Data Explorer, right? And so Log Store is one is Azure Monitor Log Store, which collects the automatically collected logs such as activity logs, but without sending them to the log analytic workspace, you will not be able to perform the log analytics query. So for you to be able to use the log analytics query, you will need to send those data to log analytic workspace.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else has any question? Anything before we move on to our final presentation? It could. The questions doesn't have to be really, uh, something challenging to the speaker, but could be anything that you might. I mean, you may come across.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something which ignites a bit of discussions possibly as well.
Yeah. Feel free to ask any question if you have. I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, I think Arjun ji, I think the best would also be to share your LinkedIn profile on the chat so that everyone can connect with it
Yeah,
as
sure.
well if just needed, right? Oh yeah, there's a question from Kurtis.
Yeah, hi Arjun. I'm just
Hi,
wondering
Peter.
how you find them migrating over to the new monitor agent from the traditional log analytic workspace agents. Is that causing you any problems? Have you noticed anything in that space migrating over to AMA?
Regarding migration to AMA, I've not noticed such problem as we speak now. I'm not entirely sure if you have any issues that you have encountered during the migration, but if you encountered any issues, I think the support team at Microsoft should be able to assist you on that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis. Thank you everyone for listening to me, and thank you for taking time to attend the session. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I will provide my LinkedIn profile on the chat, and thank you.
Thank you, Arjun ji, for your session, a wonderful session and with this, let's get over to Kurtis Milne, please.
Brilliant.
All
Thank you.
yours. The stage is all yours, Kurtis.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Let me just go ahead and let me turn my camera on first so everyone knows actually who's talking to them.
Yeah.
Let's get that on. Hi everybody. Just give me a moment and I'll get this presentation shared, and then we can go from there. So, hey everybody, welcome to the talk today. Just want to say first off, thanks to Pradeep and Arjun for the talks, and especially for Pradeep for setting up this call today. It's been really, really informative. I've enjoyed the fact that these three topics all kind of interlink in what we're talking about. We've gone quite macro with the CAF and the well-architected framework, talking around some best practice, and then how we can then monitor them solutions as well using different tooling within Microsoft Azure, which is really nice. So this should really feed into that with the Azure Landing Zone, and then taking it one step further, talking about the different approaches with infrastructure as code, and then my chosen infrastructure as code, which is Terraform, and then how we would go about maybe delivering that just at a basic level. So yeah, that's going to be the agenda today. So just a little bit of an intro, who I am. What is a landing zone? We're going to cover exactly what that is and try and unravel some misconceptions of a landing zone. Understand why it's important for your business and why it's important for your cloud strategy, whether that's a brownfield site or a greenfield site. Understand where it sits within the cloud adoption framework and the well-architected framework, and then some design considerations as well. So when you're going to deploy your landing zone, you're going to come across some architectural decision points where you're going to need to document that and say we've chose that at this point in time, and we're just going to have a little look around that and what's best for your company or your client. And then we're going to have a look at methods of deployment, how we go about deploying an Azure landing zone, and then maybe break into, well, we will break into some accelerators as well and talk about the team who developed them accelerators. And then we'll wrap up with a little demo. The demo was going at 1 o'clock this morning, so I was working on the demo. Pradeep asked for a demo, so I was like, right, we've got to get a demo ready. And it did come to success, but it was very early this morning, so you just bear with me on that. But yeah, it took very long to run, the 36 minutes to deploy the pipeline. So if I'd have left it to run on the demo, we wouldn't have a demo. So yeah, that should be really good too. So who am I? So my name's Curtis Milne. I am the Senior Cloud Architect over at Card Factory. Microsoft MVP in infrastructure as code, specializing in Terraform, other than Bicep. So you can go down either route. I chose Terraform just because that's what I started off with in my career, and I've grown quite fond of that language and got a bit of bias towards it. So I really enjoy working with Terraform. I'm a certified solutions architect and DevOps engineering expert as well. And then I've also got 10 years in the game in technology, 6 of them in consultancy, working with over 50 clients within that space. So yeah, deploying multiple sets of landing zones for different organizations that have chose different routes within their landing zone architecture. So that's my professional career. Outside of the office, I'm a martial arts enthusiast, so I like things like mixed martial arts. I support my friend who is a mixed martial artist. I come from a kickboxing background. I've got a first-hand black belt, and I've also represented Great Britain at kickboxing, and I've merited a bronze medal within the World Championships. So I love martial arts. Gym goer, I like to go to the gym, and then also I love a pint of Guinness. So if we ever meet up within the Manchester space, you know we'll be going for a drink and having a good talk about tech and some other things. I also have a YouTube channel, so I am available on the Azure Corner. That's where I do a lot of my content on YouTube, but also I am available on LinkedIn at Curtis Milne. So please feel free after this meeting or during the meeting, just go ahead and search me, add me. And yeah, if you want to have a conversation, my messages are always open. So please give me a message. So let's dive right in. So what is an Azure landing zone? What is a landing zone? And it's this. So Microsoft have got some great documentation on Cloud Adoption Framework, CAF landing zones, and it looks like this. So you might be looking at this and thinking, oh my God, this is a lot of information. There's a lot of components. But actually, when we break it up, it looks like that. So we've got 3 sections within our landing zone. We've got our identity piece, we've got our platform landing zone, and then we've got our application landing zones as well. So identity is all around how you go about accessing your tenant, how your users have permissions and what permissions they have within the tenant. So when we're thinking around the things like Enter ID. We're thinking around AD Connect and how we're syncing out on premise. If we've got on premise domain controllers, how we're going to be syncing them over to Azure and facilitating them user accounts, things like service principals and security groups, and how we're going to manage applications authenticating within our tenants, how we're going to manage users authenticating to access our tenants, things like SSO. We've got Microsoft Intune and maybe some conditional access policies. So how we're going to allow users to access organization applications. So for example, we want them to only access them from Intune rolled devices. MFA, we can roll out MFA as well. So we can roll out multi-factor authentication using some conditional access policies to say all users must have MFA enabled. We can do some auditing reporting as well. So who should be a part of what group? For example, if we've got some third parties working on a project and they've rolled off at the end of February, we'd want an audit report to say, okay, we have these users in this security group, this level of access at the end of February. How do you want to manage that? So you can really dive into that identity piece there. And then below that, we've obviously got our platform piece and the application. Now I'll come on to that in a second, because it's really important to understand that there isn't just one landing zone. It's not just Azure landing zone. There are two different types of landing zone here that we need to be aware of. We've got a platform landing zone and we've got an application landing zone as well. So we'll dive into the platform first. We talk about platform landing zones. So the platform landing zone is all around the core components. What is involved in your foundational structure and how you go about providing them core aspects to your Microsoft Azure ecosystem. So in the platform landing zone, we've got a large deployment consisting of, at the top, we've got our management groups and organizational structure. So this is how we go about carving up our tenant for RBAC. So when we look at the top group, we've got our tenant root group. So that is our entire tenant. That'll be our, let's say, for example, cardfactory.com. And then we've got our production management group underneath. Now you can have different layouts for that. You could go, Canary production. You can maybe have a separate tenant for your testing, or you can just have a single production. 9 times out of 10, you just go for your single management group structure. I've never really seen anybody take advantage of a Canary prod deployment. I think it's massively overkill, but that's my personal opinion. But yeah, so we would separate out into that management group structure. And then as we start to zoom into that, we can see under the platform piece, we've got management, identity, and connectivity. There are core components within the platform landing zone, and we'll just dive into them super quick. So we've got the management subscription, which is all around where your management of your architecture takes place. So things like log analytic workspaces. So coming into what Arjun was just discussing there in terms of storing your data and then querying that data. So for example, if I've got issues with my hub firewall, if I've got issues with one of my domain controllers, I've got a central place where I can go and I can have a look into them logs and start pulling out some metrics. Also, you can have some automation accounts in there as well. Microsoft have highlighted you can add a lot of change tracking and inventory management in there too, and just segregate its own piece. We've also got the identity subscription. So the identity subscription is all around identity authentication, and that's really where we go ahead and store our authentication for our workloads within Azure. So as you'll see within the diagram, Microsoft have given you the option of some virtual machines or some Enter ID domain services. I personally love a domain controller on a virtual machine. I think it's just so much easier, and as you might come to progress and mature as a business, it's much easier to remove from the tenant than ADDS, for example. And within the common architecture, we've gone for, I can see there's 3 DCs within the diagram. Usually you'd go for at least a minimum of 2 just to provide that failover. So using the likes of your availability zones, if you're operating, for example, in UK South, you'd have an availability zone set up for DC1 and another one for DC2, just to provide that redundancy for your authentication. Also, we host AD within the cloud just to provide that autonomy. So, and you'll understand why in a second when we come over to our connectivity subscription. So the connectivity subscription is all about how you go about connecting into your tenant. Now within here, this is also going to host your hub environment, so your central piece. So how your spokes connect into other spokes, they will route through the core hub. So the core hub would consist of a firewall in there. Usually the default now recommended by Microsoft is to go for Azure Virtual WAN. So Azure Virtual WAN to host your hub environment, and then have connecting spokes, connecting virtual networks into that central hub, and then route traffic through that virtual WAN hub with a firewall in the middle, providing that rule set. Also in there, we can have things like your express route. So again, talking around connectivity, you would have an express route linking in your on-premise domain into your Microsoft Azure domain for the hybrid connectivity. If you are a cloud native and you're cloud only, then a hybrid connectivity wouldn't be necessary. But again, you might want to have a look at some point-to-site connections. So if you've got developers working remotely, you might want them connected into Hub on a particular IP range, and then you can manipulate that traffic and manage that traffic via a rule set within your Azure firewall, and allow that to route across your architecture as you need. You can also host a site-to-site VPN in there as well. It just all depends what is best for you. But like I mentioned before, around the redundancy or providing autonomy within the cloud, if we are hybrid environments and we've got a domain controller on premise, and we're allowing virtual machines to communicate back down that connection, whether that be express route or VPN, those connections are unreliable to some extent. You can put a lot of redundancy in there, but it's just trying to remove that bottleneck and make it as secure, as efficient as possible. So if we rely on that connection goes down, we've suddenly lost all of our cloud authentication, because we're relying on that connection back to the on-premise domain controller. So just by having that domain controller in Azure removes that problem. And then also we can have a look here at the platform side. We can have a look at the DevOps aspect as well, whether that be Azure DevOps or GitHub, where we're hosting our infrastructure as code. This is an infrastructure as code presentation, so we would definitely be using something like an Azure DevOps or a GitHub to host our repositories and our infrastructure as code. And then finally as well, as you can see within the management group structure as well, we allow for the application landing zones, and we have a place for them. And then also we provide a place for our sandbox environment. Now, it's very important that we have a sandbox environment within our architecture, and somewhere that we can host our development piece and keep it segregated from our production environment, because cloud should always be about innovation and moving forward. And under that agile framework of quick to market, we need somewhere to develop within an instance and talk about some new technologies or some new resources that have just been made available from Microsoft. And if we haven't got nowhere to test, we can't grow our business, we can't mature our business, we can't use the latest tech and trends. So it's very, very important that we have sandbox facilities within Azure, and we accommodate that growth within our business. And we must encourage it. We must encourage people to, develop and move forward, because that's only how we get better as techies. So yeah, I added that in there just because I generally believe it's a really core part of a landing zone. And then also, as you can see there as well, we've got your corporate online, your decommissioned, and your sandbox, of course. So your decommissioned piece is all around that life cycle of your application. So if, for example, you come to remove an application from your business, then we drop that in the decommission piece there, just so we can roll that out. We hold the data for 6 months, let's say, and then finally we can get rid of that subscription and stop being billed entirely for that application from a computer and storage perspective within Azure. And then the next piece, when we go into that landing zones management groups structure, that's where our landing zones take place for application. So you'll see here that we've got 2 subscriptions highlighted here, and it's very important to understand that within the CAF structure for Azure Landing Zones, we're operating under a multi-subscription environment. Long gone are the days where you would host it in a single subscription and you would have all your different components within a single sub. By doing so, we remove 50% of our management structure using management groups and even subscriptions, right? Because if we go down the single subscription route, what you've got to understand is that your top level would be that subscription. So then we only have resource groups to divide up our workloads, and then the resource aspect itself. So you only got 2 mechanisms there that we can use to provide RBAC against. But by using the multi-subscription environment, what we can do there is one, we can use that decommission. So if we have an application per subscription, that application moves out of the business. It's very easy to manage the life cycle of that application. I can move that subscription under the decommissioned management group. A bunch of policies are applied from the decommission management group, and then also we can roll that out to the business and phase that out. But also then it's easier for an admin perspective. So if I need to provide access to the online team to manage all of my online facing workloads, I can drop them in at the online management group, and their permissions will cascade down into them multi subscriptions. If we're operating at a single subscription level, I can't provide them at the subscription level itself, because that's the highest possible route for access. So then the next one down has to be the resource groups. But if I've got 100 resource groups and I need access to 50 resource groups, I have to replicate that action 50 times. It just becomes inefficient, and it becomes a real headache to manage and stay on top of. If you think about a user that's left the business, yes, you can disable their account, but also you'd want to remove their access, and just for better visibility within your tenant, that will take time. And we need to be a little bit more efficient, we need to be faster, and we need to make our administrators' life as easy as possible. And that's a great way of doing so, using that multi-subscription method recommended by Microsoft. Well, as I say, the application landing zone is all about where we land our applications. So again, application per subscription. We can utilize different subscription offerings as well also, which is a really good point. We've got things like CSP agreements, we've got EA agreements, we've got a standard pay-as-you-go, we've got dev test subscriptions. So if I've got a dev workload and I can deploy in a dev test, I can automatically benefit from 50% reductions from Microsoft for my dev environments. Whereas if I'm just using a single subscription, I'm getting the same benefits for everything, which is usually either a CSP agreement for a single sub or a pay-as-you-go, and you're not really getting the best out of Azure from a cost perspective there either. So from a FinOps perspective, absolutely multi-sub works as well. But the application landing zone, and I will get back to it, sorry. The application landing zone is all about where we drop our applications. So as you can see here, we've got an application P1 in here. We've got some platform hosting capabilities in this subscription. Then the subscription 2, we've got an application that's hosting a load balancer or application gateway. We've got a backend pool of 2 virtual machines, and then we've got a database in there as well. And it just shows you where you would drop each application within that structure. Now, that might be an online facing application, so we might want to have some policies for HTTPS traffic only at the online piece. It might be an internal workload, and it might have some internal policies that fit your customer's organization or your organization. So it's really important that we get the structure right in order to accommodate that application. Okay, so why is a landing zone important? Now, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but it is your foundational structure within the cloud. It's like trying to build a house on mud. It just will not work. there's a lot of benefits that come with this foundational structure, where you can really define your organizational best practice, your governance, your how you want to manage things. This is where it's all set. It's all set within the landing zone, and this is why it's such a key part of anyone's cloud adoption journey. As I say, whether you're greenfield and you're just moving to cloud, there has to be a lot of emphasis on a landing zone piece and setting that correct platform in place. Or if you're a brownfield site and you are operating under a single subscription and you need to operate under best practice, you can build this out in parallel and then start migrating stuff over to the new world, start migrating it over to the best practice way of working. And it covers so much. It provides a lot of security, so you implement your security baselines, like I was talking about with the Azure policies that we can put in place. We can have different policies for online facing workloads versus internal workloads. We can have policies for our development subscriptions. We can put some rule sets around them in terms of budgets, in terms of resources that we can deploy. We can have a look at the platform side of things to say, our domain controllers must be backed up. We can obviously take a lot of compliance with that as well, so we can make sure we're operating to our industry standards and how we want to be deploying and managing our data. Scalability is so important as well. We can scale efficiently with a Microsoft Landing Zone, because with that multi-subscription environment, we can quickly have a new application deployed, ready to go. We can say, okay, it's an online workload, right? A new subscription. How are we going to vend that subscription? We could vend that manually. We could vend it through Terraform, through our CSP, and pull that in and bootstrap that environment. And then we can go ahead and provide the basic layer of requirements for that application. And then we can hand that over to the development team or the infrastructure team to start migrating maybe stuff from on-premise into that subscription, or building out a fresh new service for our business as well. And then also we talk around automation as well, and automation really comes under efficiency. When we were talking around efficiency as well, I was just talking about reducing that overhead for your administrators, making life as easy as possible. But the automation side of it as well will be really the main part of it. So, if, for example, you have any problems within your tenant, if anything goes wrong, you've got that automation within your Terraform or your Bicep and your CI/CD processes to be able just to redeploy as we go with that declarative language. Because if, for example, we deploy it manually, this is the only downside, is that if something breaks, we then have to try and navigate through the portal. We have to try and replicate things or recreate things. Maybe we haven't documented correctly. Maybe we've had a handover from a previous company, and it just becomes quite heavy task. It's not as efficient as what we could be. So yeah. Okay, so I did mention the cloud adoption framework and the well-architected framework previously, and I know Pradeep gave us a really good overview of these two, and this is why I said this talk's so great, is because we're all linked into one another. So I won't spend too much time on them. But essentially, as Pradeep said, CAF and WAF are just basically two key frameworks provided by Microsoft to help us design, implement, and govern our cloud as effectively and securely as possible. So on a macro level, we've got our cloud adoption framework, which highlights that entire process from all the way from planning all the way into manage. And the landing zones are a really key part of our cloud adoption framework because it has its own piece. It has the ready state. Now, the ready state is all around getting your cloud ready to receive workloads from on-premise. So I actually highlighted the Microsoft adoption framework here on Microsoft Learn. If you haven't already, please go and have a look at it. If you are looking at maybe adopting cloud, or you are talking to a client who is wanting to move into the cloud from a traditional on-premise architecture, this is a must read. It will absolutely help. It's helped a lot of us here at Card Factory. It helped a lot of my clients working at Insight, and it's just a really good, thorough document to go and read through. It talks about your motivations on why you want to move to cloud and how you need to get them right, how it needs to be driven from the top down, how you go about planning your organization's migration, how you identify roles within the business and how they would transition over to the cloud from traditional on-premise roles. We've obviously got that readiness state there, and about how we go about deploying a landing zone. What is a landing zone? Some key concepts of Azure landing zones, and then how we go about migrating, using things like Azure Migrate, Docker Migrate for application assessments within on-premise, and then how we go about innovating and managing those workloads, how we follow that DevOps philosophy of chasing that art of perfection, always working it through the layers. And this is where it really comes into the well-architected framework, is that once those workloads are in Azure from a macro level, and we've got our platform, we've got our hybrid connectivity, we've got our application landing zones, and we're landing within Azure, we've then got workloads within Azure that then can be progressed and that they can be refined. So if, for example, we've gone for a lift and shift and we've had to exit our data center pretty quickly, we've deployed Azure Migrate, we've migrated those virtual machines across to a subscription. Yes, that's good. We're hosted in Azure. We've got it on a virtual machine, but there's something that we can do a little bit more. We can maybe refactor that application to start using some PaaS services, start taking advantage of some cloud native architecture. Maybe we want to re-architect it entirely. So, for example, we're tired of running on old virtual machines. We want to have a look at maybe deploying some web apps, or we want to move to a SQL database on PaaS using the likes of private endpoints, or maybe we want to use a Kubernetes cluster instead, and we want to re-architect the solution to use those native toolings as opposed to your traditional VM, and break things out into function apps and logic apps, etc. So that's all around where the well-architected framework comes in. From a micro level, we start assessing our workloads and then applying them against the 5 pillars: cost optimization, security, reliability, operational excellence, performance efficiency. So cost is always going to be a big driver. It always is the driver. When you speak to a client, they always say, how much is it going to cost me? How much can I save? So we have to do everything within budget. We have to do everything within that scope. So obviously cost affects the other 4 pillars. So if you want the cheapest option, it's not going to be very secure. It's not going to be as reliable as it could be. It's not going to be as operational excellent as it would be, and it's not going to be as performative as we would want. So there has to be a level of balance within there. So as long as we're communicating that to either our stakeholders or our bosses or our clients, to say, look, it might cost you a little bit more, but in doing so, you will improve that security and make that data more secure that you're hosting within your tenants, and your customer data will be more secure and you'll be safer. And then the reliability. So if you go down, for example, in UK South, we can have you running in a failover environment within the hour within UK West, and you guys can continue to operate as need be. Or we can put some, as I say, we can put some availability sets in there to ensure that virtual machines within the data centers don't fail. So we've got some redundancy in there. We're using things like availability zones too, and we're increasing them SLAs. We're providing those 4 nines within Azure. We're getting the most out of Microsoft's architecture. And then also with the operational excellence, how are we operating within this application? Are we deploying things via ClickOps? Are we, have we got any repositories in place? Have we got any IAC in place? How can we improve that route to live? What can that look like? How can we ensure that we have 0 errors when we go live on production day? All about refining that process and making that as best as possible. And then finally, performance as well. So using things like scale sets, scaling efficiently, cooling down efficiently, making sure that your cost isn't impacted because you've left your virtual machines scaled at 100 VMs from 2 VMs, and now they don't have a cooldown, so they don't reduce back down, and you've got a massive bill in the morning. So it's all about then applying them pillars at that application level to your migrations as well. So land and zone considerations. Now we talked around some of the considerations for your business and what you need to consider. So when I mentioned things like virtual WAN, or virtual WAN will be more expensive than the traditional hub and spoke using things like virtual networks, but there will be a trade-off: easier deployments, easier manageability. Routing becomes a lot easier using things like virtual WAN. You haven't got to then put a root server in and stuff like that. So these are considerations that you need to go through when you are designing your architecture. Things like VPN versus express route. Do I need the throughput of an express route? Can I get away with a VPN? Obviously, express route is going to cost more, but it provides greater reliability. And as you can see, we're starting to trade off against that well-architected framework. We're starting to bring those pillars into our design, and we're saying, okay, cost versus reliability versus operational excellence. How do we manage that? And as you go through architecting solutions, you'll notice that you are naturally comparing those 5 pillars. So things like update management: how do you want to update your IaaS environment? How do you want to keep your SQL running on VM updated? How do you want to keep your virtual machines updated? How do you want to collect your logs? Where are you storing those logs? Are you storing your application logs within the same subscription? Are you breaking them out into the management subscription? If, for example, you are using a DevOps approach and you are deploying via a form of pipeline, where you're going to host that. Are you going to go as your DevOps? Are you going to go GitHub? What brings benefit back to your business? What's cheaper? What does the industry recommend? Where's Microsoft putting its attention? These are all questions that are going to come up. Even things like IAC. So if you go down the infrastructure as code route, what language are you going to use? Are you going to use the native tooling within Bicep? Because maybe, for example, your business is Microsoft only. So it's a Microsoft house. We use Microsoft Azure. We don't have any AWS. We don't have any GCP, for example. Then it might make sense then to move to Bicep, because if everything's Microsoft, just keep everything Microsoft. If, for example, you're a multi-cloud environment, you've got some GCP, you've got some AWS kicking about, maybe you've got some previous experience with Terraform, maybe you see a lot more value in that language, with it being in the industry leader, then maybe you want to adopt Terraform to facilitate those needs and those requirements. And then if you are adopting Terraform, just be aware of Terraform state. Terraform state is very, very, very sensitive. It needs to be stored in a remote backend. So that would be a storage account. And then by default, that would be open to the public. So if you've deployed a storage account and you're using public runners, please don't, just because every piece of configuration is stored within JSON and plain text. So things like connection strings, things like passwords will be available in that state file, along with usernames as well. So if you are going down the Terraform route, just be aware that you will need to stick a private endpoint on that storage account and utilize private runners. So for example, if you're using GitHub, make sure you're using private runners to communicate across your architecture, communicate with that private endpoint, and keep all traffic on the Microsoft backbone and keep it away from public view. Now, we've talked a lot about methods of deployment. We've talked about Bicep. We've talked about Terraform. And there's also a manual option as well. Now, the manual option, yes, there is, in my opinion, still somewhere for that manual option. So if you are a one-person team and your business is, being under the cosh as such, because costs are rising within their private data center, or their VMware licenses are drastically increasing, so the price is too much to consider, and you need a quick exit into Microsoft Azure, but you've got all these tasks, and then you don't know Terraform, you haven't got the time, then absolutely the manual option is available for you through the portal. It's not the recommended option, and it's not the best practice option, just because this time could be really used to innovate and drive forward within a new world of infrastructure as code. But it is an option if you need it. It's not the preferred option, but it is an option. And then also, as I say, we've got the Bicep and Terraform options as well. Bicep and Terraform have both got accelerators available within GitHub. They're really comprehensive, really good, and we'll see that in the demo later on in this talk. But I am a Terraform person, and I would highly recommend reviewing Terraform and having a look at Terraform. But again, that will all come down to your architects in-house and what decision works best for your business. And it is all about what's best for your business at the end of the day. You have to keep that at the forefront of your mind when designing these solutions. It can't be what's best for one person or what's best for a team. It has to be what's best for your business. And that will help you weigh up and make those decisions a lot easier. But the ISC accelerator is available on GitHub. It's absolutely fantastic, and it goes through different levels of deployment. So depending on what level you want to manage via Terraform, whether it just be the organizational structure within management groups, whether that be a level 200 and starting deploying some core resources, or a level 300 and you're deploying a lot more. I think there's a level 400 in there as well for custom code. But it really does give you an option of how much you want to go down the rabbit hole into infrastructure as code for deploying your landing zone. Now, before we get started on the example, I just want to give a shout out to Azure Verified Modules. So if you are looking at adopting infrastructure as code, or whether you're using infrastructure as code at the moment, Azure Verified Modules are absolutely fantastic. These are pre-configured modules provided by the Microsoft team. They're tested, kept well up to date, and it saves you having to do all of that manual development. If you're following the principle of dry and don't repeat yourself, use what's already available. If somebody's already done all that hard stuff for you, and you can just go ahead, call that module, and then put in your values, it just makes your life a lot easier, and also it's quicker to market, because then you can have things deployed in half the time instead of sat in VS Code or a terminal trying to work out exactly what the issue is. All that legwork's being done for you, and you're just cherry picking what you want and having that deployed in your tenant in minutes instead of hours. So definitely go ahead, have a look at Azure Verified Modules for both Bicep and Terraform. Really, really, really cool stuff. Okay, example time. Now, I would recommend pulling up the Terraform for the Terraform accelerator. What I'll do is I'll paste it in the chat for everybody, just so you've got some visibility. I would recommend going through it on your own as well. The documents are really informative, and it's really straightforward, super comprehensive. Just definitely have a play with it, get comfortable with it. It's really, really good stuff. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. Give me 2 seconds. As you can see, just before I start, I bootstrapped the environment this morning. It did take a little bit of a while, but I only had to populate a few documents. It does walk you through how to do it. And as you'll see there, we use PowerShell to bootstrap our environment. And this is bootstrapping the GitHub repository that I created within my organization. And it gives me things like pipelines and my Terraform to go ahead and deploy within my tenant. There's a few prerequisites, things like service principles, but we'll walk through that in the steps. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so can everyone see my browser now? It should be on Azure Landing Zone's Terraform Accelerator. Can we see that? Excellent, fantastic. Okay, so this is the Azure Landing Zone Terraform Accelerator. A big shout out actually to Jared Holgate and his team. This is absolutely a fantastic repository, and yeah, they're always working on it. I raised a bug earlier this morning. I think it was partly my problem, so I was just in a panic, and he'd already responded to me this morning. So it's yeah, they work really, really hard to keep this up to date, and yeah, kudos to them. They're doing an incredible job. So yeah, thank you, Jared. So if we head over to the README, and we have a little read through here, we can see that. Let me just go back to this actually. So yeah, come down to the README, and then what we want to do is we want to have a look at the accelerator docs, and then we can have a good read through. It talks around the accelerators, what the bootstrapping does, what you get, and then it gives you your different scenarios. So if you're using GitHub, you've got Microsoft Azure there for Terraform. You've got Azure DevOps in there as well. So if you are using Azure DevOps as a platform, it is available. They are the only two DevOps platforms available in here. Things like GitLab, for example, Bitbucket, they don't seem to be available. So Microsoft are really pushing you down their products, which I actually don't have a problem with. I absolutely love GitHub. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And then also with GitHub Copilot coming into the mix, it's just going to be an absolute game changer. So yeah, highly recommend GitHub. So if we then go check out the user guide and we understand what we want, there's a getting started page, there's a quick start page. We go through that, and then we go, okay, understand phase one. So phase one is all around bootstrapping your environment, making sure you've got your prerequisites in place. This is where I was talking about the multi-subscription environment. So they recommend having a subscription for each management, connectivity, and your identity as well. We're not using a single subscription. Now, unfortunately, I only had one subscription, so you'll see that error in a sec, but I'll show you how it works, because we did manage to get that management structure deployed for you. So yeah, just walk through the steps. Very, very simple. Talk around bootstrapping your environment, then install the ALZ PowerShell module. If you're using GitHub like I was today, just scroll through. You'll be asked for some inputs. So these are the inputs that it asks you for. Just fill them out in the YAML file, and just go ahead and populate what's required for your deployment. Again, you can go ahead and run a basic starter. So this is the one I ran, the management groups and policies. Policies actually take a really long time to deploy, which I didn't realize. So this is the one that I followed. So if you go in here, for example, it will just give you the basic Terraform and YAML requirements. So you just copy paste that within the YAML location recommended by the document, populate your root ID, etc. And then you will get down to phase 3. Now, if we go back to my editor, I'm just going to come out of that super quick. I'm just going to load up my VS Code for you all. And just let me know if you can see that VS Code coming through now. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so it will ask you to go ahead and populate your inputs. It will ask you to populate the YAML file. So based on those requirements we just seen before, it will ask you again to populate the values in here. And then I went ahead and ran the bootstrapping here. So ran the PowerShell command that it recommended, which is the deploy accelerator, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. And all that's doing is that's bootstrapping your environment. That's providing a pre-configured GitHub repo with pipelines and populating your Terraform based on the values that you provided with, so it's populating that Terraform ready to be deployed. Now, let me go back to my web browser. User guide. Okay. So this is the organization that I created. Now, you will need an organization to run the pipeline. Just be aware of that. If you're trying to do it under your user account, it won't work. That was a bug I picked up. Well, it's not a bug, it's just a mistake that I made this morning. It will go ahead and generate a repository for you. So as you can see here, ALZ management. And then it will provide you with a basic Terraform structure, and also you can populate your README if need be, but it'll just give you your core components based on the enterprise CAF scale repository. And then also the tasks, as you can see here in phase 3, it will ask you to run phase 3. So we just navigate here, and we run the pipeline that it has generated for us. So as you can see here, it's generated 2 pipelines. You'll kick off this pipeline, and then when you kick this off, it actually does some integration as well. So run some continuous integration, and then it'll do some validations and plans for you. So we'll check out your code, install Terraform. It'll do a format check for you. It'll run an init, and then it'll run a validate as well and tell you your Terraform is good to go. And then finally, we'll get that continuous delivery as well. And when we run that, it will run. Now, as you can see from the timings, it took 37 minutes to run this pipeline. So I'm glad I ran it before the call. Otherwise, we might not have got a demo. It did fail, but that's because I'm using a single subscription, and I think that has some form of conflict. Yes, there's a question. Sorry, I've just seen that. Yeah, hello.
Hi, we're on the web page.
Okay, am I not sharing the GitHub?
Yeah, sharing your on the web page at the moment.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So I'm still in the GitHub org, aren't I? Yeah, no. Can you guys see the GitHub webpage? Sorry.
Hey Curtis, it's James.
Hi James, how you doing?
All right, mate. Yeah, good. Yeah, so at the moment I can still see the web page that's got Azure DevOps and then GitHub and local file system. That's what's on the page.
Okay, thank you. Give me 2 seconds. Apologies. Let's just have a look. Brilliant, thank you. So can you now see GitHub?
Yes.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, so apologies for that. So let me just run through it super quick. So as I say, it will bootstrap your environment. It will bootstrap your organization. It will provide you with a repository. And then within the phase 3, it will provide the steps as you've seen while I've been talking. It will ask you to go ahead and run some actions. So as you can see here, it provides you with 2 GitHub actions. Now, I did mention that it did take 37 minutes to run here, so it did fail, and I understand why it failed, because as I say, I'm using a single subscription within my tenants. That it needs a multi-subscription environment, and that's why we need to adopt the multi-subscription environment. And then as we go in here, you'll start to see what it's doing. So it plans your Terraform. We've done some CI as well. We've done some validation testing. And this is all out of the box as well, everybody. So this is all within the Bootstrap. So this is what Jared and his team have been working on. And you get this straight out. There's been no configuration whatsoever within here. You get a Terraform plan. So this just lets you know exactly what you are deploying. Have a little look through that if you're happy with that. There is actually a breakpoint within here. So if, for example, you're not happy, you can just cancel that. There's some approval process bootstrapped within the deploy accelerator as well, and some branch protection as well following that Git best practice. So that's really, really good to take in, whether you are using this or whether you're using your own environment. It's very, very handy to have. And then, as I say here, we've got the apply. So the apply failed just because I've not got, as I say, a multi-sub environment. But as you can see, it took 34 minutes to deploy. We've got a lot of stuff deployed, and actually it deployed our management group structure. So if I just cancel that and share again, what you'll see here is it's actually deployed a very basic management structure based on CAF. No, we won't see that. Why won't we see that? 2 seconds. Haha. Give me 2 secs. I know why. There it is. Apologies, I was signed in with the wrong user. Oh, don't we love a demo, everybody? Don't we love a demo? Okay, so this is the basic structure that it's went ahead and deployed. Now, remember when I mentioned around the levels and we could have then different deployments? I only chose the level 100 just for the demo today, just to show the power of deployments. But as you can see here, we've got a full structure in place according to CAF. We've got a platform structure deployed here with connectivity, identity, management, and then, as I say, there's my single subscription there for management as well. And then if we go into the management section, we can also see some resources deployed for us here. So we've got an identity piece deployed for us. That's because I had to choose this subscription. It does actually say put in your identity subscription ID here, your management and your connectivity. I only had one sub, so I had to bundle it all in one, but please don't bundle it all in one. So if we have a look at this, you've got some managed identities here for some actions. You've got your state file where we put our Terraform state. So again, I would always recommend managing your state file in the management subscription within that central location and removing them from the application. So if any additions or anything goes wrong with that application, we've segregated that state from that subscription. We're hosting that locally, and that will be managed by the platform team in that central location. Just protect the state is so valuable from a Terraform perspective, so you must manage it correctly. And then we've got a management group deployed here as well with some resources, some data collection rules, and a log analytic workspace as well. So that's what you can expect just from the level 100. As I say, I would highly recommend just walking through it. The documentation is absolutely awesome, and it's a really fun project just to do yourself. It's very doable yourself. If you go ahead and sign up for the Azure subscription for 200 credits, I believe you'd be able to run through that. Just be aware that I actually got an error. I tried to deploy in UK South and UK West, but due to the subscription that I had, it was only available to do within East US, East US 2, Northern Europe, and somewhere else. So just use East US 2. Just be aware of that issue. It just saves you waiting 20 minutes for something to fail. You can just box it off almost immediately. So yeah, that's the demo in a nutshell. I would have liked to have run it live, but as you see from the times, it just wasn't feasible. So hopefully you can go away and do it yourself using the link in the chat. And yeah, I hope you have fun deploying your landing zones, and good luck. Thank you very much. Is there any questions from anybody around landing zones, CAF, infrastructure as code, Terraform, anything at all? Yes, James. Yes.
Let me stick the camera on, if that works. I really enjoyed that. And it's something that I wanted to learn more about. So my last role, I did a lot of work around setting up new tenants, subscriptions to specific designs. This sort of stuff would have made my life a lot easier. But the amount of stuff I know about GitHub, I probably know more about brain surgery. It's you know, I'm security. I'm not on the infrastructure side, but I'm really keen to learn. So I guess it's more. Do you have any sort of pointers of what's the easiest way to start learning that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is going to sound a bit of a fob off, but it's really not. I always learn by doing. So I always, I preach that to my team, and my team are very much the same. We love to just get in and do a lab and find out all the problems with it and fix forward. From a security perspective, though, it'd be really, really important just for you to understand things like Terraform state. So Terraform state by default is stored in plain text. So if you are using things like GitHub, naturally it defaults to public runners. So you use GitHub runners to come in via HTTPS into your portal, but in order to do so, your backend must be open to public. So it becomes quite difficult to find the IPs of GitHub runners and then put that in a firewall, etc. So things like, from your perspective, there is use things like private endpoints on storage account for backend. Use self-hosted runners via containers within your environment. Branch protection is so important as well. So within GitHub, protecting that main branch, having it go through a process. So I have to break off from branch. I have to develop my feature on a separate branch whilst main is intact. Then I have to put in a pull request, and it has to have, for example, a minimum of 2 users approving. So let's say then, okay, I've done these changes, and then in the pull request, I've said, these are the changes I've made. These are the tests that I've done.
Mm.
You can see it's gone through validation. You can see it's formatted correctly. It's TF linked correctly. For example, Chekhov policies as well. So Chekhov is a testing tool specifically for Terraform, but you can go ahead and check it against your policies for your workplace. So for example, when I mentioned around private endpoints on storage accounts, it will look for a storage account and it will say, no, you can't deploy that because there's no private endpoint on it, or that's a SQL database. It hasn't got a private endpoint on it. So you can really enforce a lot of layers within that strategy before it actually touches production. And then you have to have that manual step of somebody actually reading through it as well. So you've got your policies, you've got your TF link, which is your automated testing, but then also you've got someone manually checking as well before it gets released to main. And then you can have 2 people and then say, okay, both people say that's good, click tick, and then deploy that to production. So by the time it gets to prod, there should be no issues. So there's different layers that you can put in within GitHub, and then also just be aware of certain things within Terraform. But I totally agree with you as well about the infrastructure side and knowing landing zones. Landing zones is the most important thing you should focus on, in my opinion, when migrating to the cloud. Or even if you go onto a client and they haven't got a landing zone in place and it doesn't follow CAF structure, definitely have a conversation with them about it, because it will just make their life so much easier in the future. But also from multiple pieces, right? So routing things through a central firewall within Hub, scaling the business and having multiple applications with different RBAC permissions and different service principals with different levels of access. That becomes so much easier to manage within that CAF structure. If you're all bundled into one bucket, it's a nightmare to try and divide it because we haven't got many options. So absolutely, it's massive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Because I mean, my attitude is always, what's the easiest way to achieve something? And through automation, it's the best way. So stuff like this is incredibly helpful. But as with all of it, it's hard to learn and to make it easy.
Yeah. It is.
So DevOps is on my list at some point this year.
Yeah. No, definitely. And do you know what? I think it's very hard when you're not doing it in the workplace. So if you don't operate under that way of working and you're trying to introduce that into the business, you do need buy-in from the top. Otherwise, it just will fizzle out. If you're not, if you haven't got your managers or your CIO enforcing that new way of working, saying, no, this is the standard we're going to adhere to now, it becomes so easy to navigate, because people go, oh, it was easier the other way. I could have this deployed in 10 minutes. Yes, you could have it deployed in 10 minutes, but then you try fixing that when it goes broke next week, and then you're fixing it for half an hour.
Yeah.
You put that foundational time in with the infrastructure as code, and that the development piece is always the longest. But then all you're doing is investing time now for the future. So you're making your life so much easier. So when you get a call at 1 o'clock in the morning saying something's broke, you can have it resolved like that, as opposed to log into the portal, let's check the logs, let's do this. Your life becomes so much easier. So you're investing now for the future. That's how I try and look at it, because it does get buggy at times, and you're thinking, oh, I wish I could just go in, I know what to do. But if you stay at it, it will save you so much time.
No, brilliant. No, thank you.
Thanks, James. Thank you very much. Yes, Pradeep.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, James, for your questions as well. I mean, it's wonderful when someone asks questions and then having the context and to understand from the conversation is really next level. So just a quick one, really, Cortez, before we close, I think. I mean, you had the Terraform for deployment, but there can be biceps, of course.
Yes.
are you also doing biceps, for instance? And if you are, why and why not? Just a quick one.
Okay, so no, I always I would never recommend mixing the two. I would always say if you're going to use an infrastructure as code, go down the route of one, because it will become confusing. So if you've got one repository in Bicep, one repository in Terraform, your team has to manage two languages and upskill in two areas. Just stick to one. I personally love Terraform because for the current business I work with, we are in a multi-cloud environment. We're operating our point of sales within GCP and then also within Microsoft Azure as well. So if it provides us that option where we can use Terraform and its multiple providers within those different environments. But if you, the recommendation I would always go with Bicep is that it's Azure native, it's Microsoft's language, and also there's no state file to actually manage. So from a security perspective, you've got one less thing to worry about, and state is always going to be the most important thing to manage. But Bicep manages that in the back end. You don't have to know about that, worry about that. So it's a big weight off your shoulders. But again, infrastructure as code is going to become more and more easier to adopt now, with the likes of GitHub Copilot just being made available for free. You know, you can go ahead and develop some modules yourself. You can use the Azure verified modules either for Bicep or for Terraform. There's a lot more information out there now than there was, 2-3 years ago, and it's just going to keep getting easier and easier to adopt. So yeah, it really does depend on your circumstance. Probably just keep it quite simple. If you're all in Azure, maybe go for Bicep. If you're on multi-cloud and and you want to have multiple providers available to you, go for Terraform.
Right.
The big advantage I see for Terraform as well is that there's a certification link to Terraform, so you can have a tailored learning approach for Terraform and get certified at the end of it. So if you are looking for new roles or you're looking to impress your boss, you can say, look, I'm a little bit more efficient in Terraform now. I'm at HashiCorp standard of associate. I understand this technology, and then you can demonstrate that to the wider audience. So I think that's a big win for Terraform too, is the learning capability that it provides.
Right, absolutely brilliant, Curtis. Thank you for your insights into this session, and thank you so much for the entire presentation. And with this, I have put up this feedback form on the. Hope everyone can see this. Just in case if you have not seen, there's a QR code that you can scan and share your quick feedback to today's meetup. Obviously, there are things we need to improve. We can improve, but then your feedback really helps so that we can fine tune further for the next meetup as well. With this, lastly, thank you so much to all our speakers, to Curtis, to Arjun for your wonderful sessions, and all our attendees today. Thank you so much. And without you, this meetup really doesn't make sense to have just speak within us, right? So hopefully, would like to meet again in our Feb meetup, and if there is anything in between, in fact, if you would like to speak in our upcoming meetup, just fill out the speaker form, which is embedded to the meetup February meetup page, which I have posted that on the chat down below. With this, thank you once again to all of you. Have a lovely rest of the weekend, and see you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you.